good morning, everybody. My name is Joe Casey, the County Administrator for Chesterfield County. Appreciate you being with us on these periodic press briefings as we go through unprecedented times of balancing budgets during economic times and post-pandemic times, hopefully. We're proud to report that the path that we started with you back in December has come to fruition today. We had a press briefing in February. We outlined our revenues and the constraints that we had and the relief programs we have, and we balanced against them with the budget that's being released in detail today and available for all to see. You know, in response to the rising prices, including homes and vehicles, and the increased cost of our private sector businesses trying to compete and sell their goods and services, we presented an array of relief programs just a few weeks ago, and I'm proud to note that all of those relief programs proposed back then are still embedded in the proposed budget before the Board of Supervisors and the public today. And as a reminder, those relief programs include a 3-cent real property rate reduction. We initially started with 2 cents back in December. We felt like we could actually lower it an additional penny of relief. We're providing increased tax relief for our elderly and disabled populations that have the hardest time, many on fixed incomes. We're eliminating the car tax for 14,000 vehicles. These are our lowest valued vehicles, which again proportionally are probably in the households that have the hardest time paying such car tax bills. We're reducing the vehicle registration fee by 50%, again taking that pressure off of the tax bill. And for our businesses, we're raising the exemption on our business licenses an additional $100,000. Again, that array of programs, unprecedented as far as the volume of them and the magnitude of them presented in February, are embedded in the budget before you today. But since February, many of our citizens got assessment notices on their cars. And the valuation practices, while we use the lowest of the ranges of valuation, I don't have to tell you that many of the used vehicle markets and new car markets have gone up. We're all used to having vehicles that depreciate every year. By a certain amount, some vehicles depreciate significantly every year, resulting in a lower car tax bill. That was not the case in this past year in the valuation tables that are used. Many, if not all, the vehicles in Chesterfield County may have gone up by a certain amount, some by incredible amounts. That we can't tolerate that as far as what we need as a government and revenues from that increased amount. We did not forecast for that increased amount. People did not forecast those increased tax payments in their budgets. Therefore, we tried to figure out something unique that we could do that would have targeted relief to the car tax bill itself for the citizen household. As many know, the state of Virginia back in the 1990s instituted a car tax relief program that went up to about 70% of the value of the car. It's a line item still in the state's budget. It's been fixed for about 20 years at $950 million. That 70% formula has been reduced every year because, as you would imagine, the $950 million statewide is not going to the same proportion in values of the vehicles as the state of Virginia has grown and the price of vehicles have increased. Therefore, our calculation, like every other local government in Virginia, has slowly gone down from 70% to 65, 60, and so forth to whatever is the equalized amount for the relief that Chesterfield is getting today from the state, equal to about 20 years ago. I'm going through that only because that mechanism is going to be our trick. It's going to be our trick, in essence, to enable us to provide, for the first time, and perhaps maybe in all of Virginia's history, an additional local car tax relief percent on top of the state's formula. We have done through our budget mechanisms, not needing the revenues that would be generated from this higher than assessed value practice of car tax bills. We're going to be netting that percentage down by an additional amount close to $15 million off of the car tax bills. Hopefully that applies to every citizen in Chesterfield County, proportion to their vehicle. They'll see that additional percent on the bill. We have worked with our Treasurer's Office to how best administer the tax billing process. And again, that proposal now is embedded as part of a balanced budget that will be presented to the Board of Supervisors today for their consideration, amongst many other considerations. And so we hope to have that be subject to the public hearing process, subject to the appropriations resolution on April 6th, but more importantly, subject to everybody knowing that, again, we are trying to be mindful of what is probably the biggest change I've seen in my whole career of a valuation change of car vehicles. It's a volatile market for car vehicles. We don't know where we'll be another year from now in setting such relief percent, or if again, vehicles start depreciating back to market norms. Again, we may just have to revert back to the state's formula. But for now, the June 5th car tax bills that people will have to pay are going to hopefully have $15 million less coming to Chesterfield County. The other notable thing in today's budget, in the balanced budget, which again we're going to have 4 hours or so of work sessions on, is our workforce retention, recruitment, reward programs. As I mentioned before, we had a great initiative last year with our schools on the teacher side of the scales and our public safety sworn officers. We are, in this balanced budget, again, reinvesting and continuing the methodologies to best recruit, retain, and reward those professions, and with a decompressed step system. And as promised, we've applied a civilian pay study for the first time, county and schools together, of having a methodology how to reward, retain, and recruit all the other positions in Chesterfield County. And as you would imagine, for those positions and professions that are harder to recruit, they are being rewarded more, and the starting salaries of those positions will be increasing. We're doing all of this as, again, part of the balanced budget that you see before you today, and as part of the diligence we have in being mindful of the tax dollar, as we continue to pay attention to the guardrails that have been here for 30-plus years of per capita spending. We are trying to always not grow Chesterfield County more than by an inflation rate, which is a lagging inflation rate, quite frankly, that was much lower than what might be before us, and the growth and the demand of services upon us. We believe that that's respectful of, again, your tax dollar, and to get the most out of the tax dollars back into the services. And with that, I'll pass it on to Matt Harris, Deputy County Administrator to my left, or Gerard Durkin, Budget Director to my right.
Thanks, Dr. Casey. So, like Joe said, I think the two overarching priorities here are, first and foremost, to take care of our residents, our businesses in Chesterfield County, and make sure that it's a very strange economic times that we're in, and we want to make sure that we're being mindful of the realities that they face every day, whether at their kitchen table or at the gas pump. That's number one. So just put that in a little bit of context, because Dr. Casey went through a lot of pieces and parts there. The tax relief measures in this budget today total up to over $50 million, almost to $52 million. So that's just to kind of give you the scale and the magnitude of what we're talking about. And there's nothing in our financial history that comes anywhere close to that kind of tax relief for the citizens of Chesterfield County. On an average household basis, that works out to about $300 per household. That's at a house that's valued around $350,000 with 3 cars, which is about the average, and then the vehicle registration relief that comes along with each one of those. So it's a meaningful number, we feel, and again, it covers all of our bases. That's the average household profile, as Dr. Casey touched on. As part of his remarks, there's a business component through BPOL. We have the senior program, which in total, the total relief granted from our overall program is almost $14 million. So that really, again, is the hallmark of this budget, recognizing that, valuations of the things that are really important to us from a financial perspective, real property and personal property, because of, again, some weird economic fundamentals, those values are at all-time highs. And we want to make sure that we have the proper restraint as part of this spending plan, that we are not putting all of those dollars to work, and that we are returning as much of that to the citizenry as we possibly can, while recognizing that there are some very important things that we need to accomplish. And first and foremost on that list is taking care of the workforce. We've figured out, I think, from county, you've heard from the school division, also their number one priority. It is as well for us. We'll have some details today as part of the work session, but trying to get your arms around the labor market and where you need to land to be competitive changes really on sort of a day-to-day basis. So we are still studying that particular topic to put the finishing touches on it. We'd like to invite all you back on April 6th is when we adopt, to kind of give you those final amounts. As we look at an area like public safety, for example. The fire chief's going to speak to that today, and you'll be able to see how our competitive position has eroded in terms of starting salary and remaining very competitive for those first responders. So we're in the process of studying that and trying to set all of our starting salaries and then those resulting compression adjustments at the right levels. And again, we will share those details on April 6th, but you'll get the sense today. Today is really about telling the story about why it's important. What are we seeing in terms of market conditions that is causing us to respond to that, to make sure that, again, we can maintain our competitive position, our most valuable asset. We've got a $540 million referendum as part of this. We don't want to gloss over that, but at the end of the day, our most valuable asset is absolutely our citizens, our customers, and then internally it's the people that deliver all the programs and services every day. So that's why we were talking so much about those particular groups. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Durkin. He's going to give you just a sampling of some of the initiatives that are in here. Typically when we're down here talking about a proposed budget, it has a laundry list perhaps of enhancements and initiatives and programs that we might be trying to put into a particular budget. This year that list is very subdued because, again, we're prioritizing tax relief, we're prioritizing workforce, but there still are some programmatic things that we wanted to accomplish. So I'm going to let Gerard just give you a sample of some of those. Again, the full presentation is out there now. I think, looking at the clock, we will have a few minutes for some questions, so if you want to get into that, we're happy to. But to just give you a few highlights of our programmatic increases here.
Sure, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So as Matt said, every year we do have some targeted investments in our operations. This year is a little bit lighter, with Matt saying, with their focus on the workforce and tax relief, but we have been able to work with departments to fund some strategic initiatives. And one thing I will say is that we have a lot of asks every year. We can't fund those asks every year. You will see in our document that's been released for the first time a listing of all those requests that we weren't able to fund. That doesn't mean that they weren't worthy of being funded, but we are mindful of all the competing pressures on the same tax dollar. So some of the highlights that are in our additional funding requests, really focusing on kind of 6 areas, so kind of emphasis on our customer service. One of the things in the budget is funding for our taxpayer portal that allows businesses and citizens to go online, view their bills, and be able to pay rather than kind of having to come in or do the kind of old traditional methods. Secondly, we do have funding in for an internship program that kind of dovetails with the kind of workforce, looking towards the future, bringing people in, recruiting talent and retaining that talent. For public safety, we've been able to add positions for minimum staffing, and also an expansion every year with our police service aid program. Again, that kind of recruitment and retention pipeline for our public safety division. And then libraries, they have had a large demand over the last few years. Last year we started to program a part-time to full-time conversion to improve our levels of service. That is still in this plan that will be funded over the next 5 years. But one of the big things that's in our additional funding requests, inflation has been a topic that's been in everyone's mind, on businesses, even personally. A large part of our additional funding requests go towards those contracts. We are obligated to pay them. We can't get out of them, so we have to fund them. They totaled about $2 million out of that $7 million request. So when we say there are additional enhancements, those are obligations that we still have to pay. We do have to be mindful of those contracts and ensure that we can still provide the levels of service that everyone's been accustomed to.
And you mentioned minimum staffing, just for it's a more of a local government term. That's a fire department initiative. It's really just adding firefighter positions so that we could maintain, the level of staffing across the system, make sure that we can respond to whatever event might come up. So it's not necessarily opening a new station or putting a new piece of apparatus in place, but making sure that the overall system has enough bodies in it so that on each and every day we can hit that minimum number that's required to respond to all of the activities that might go on that day. With that, Jay, I think we're...
Yeah, and if I could just bring closure to it, again, I want to thank Matt Harris, Gerard Durkin, and his whole department, but just as important, all the departmental leaders and their individual budget processes they go through, the schools and their processes and their community meetings. We're beginning our community meetings soon after today as well, and that's all publicly posted. And then we look forward to that exercise and engagement. And again, just to reiterate, this local car tax relief percent, this is just days in the making. And amazingly, I was at a meeting and hearing citizens talk about the assessment notices they had just received being high. And I was thinking, we got to do something. We can't do nothing, and we don't need the money. We don't need that type of money from a surplus. And so I called Matt Harris, and ironically, he was thinking the same exact thing. So we worked through the channels as quickly as we could to rebalance the budget, not dependent upon that surplus, And what you have before us today is that additional close to $15 million in relief to the people of Chesterfield County. So with that said.